Hello everyone, welcome back to this next video. This time we're gonna discuss an article on Vox. I don't know this website, seems interesting. I should take a look actually since we're here. It's just a politics website apparently. They do talk about international politics, so to see. So it's pretty interesting. Let's look at this article. They have this article about the alt-right. The alt-right is more than a warmed over white supremacy. It's that, but way weirder. So they do continue to assume that it's a warmed over white supremacy, but much weirder. Look at this meme. I don't know how that represents it. It's a good point though, but it's weird. I did download it, so I'm probably gonna share it at some point. Meme by Benjamin Williams. Okay. There is, lurking in Reddit and 4chan threads and in community blogs and forums, a movement of right-wingers who openly argue that democracy is a joke. That is weak, it's corrupt, and it caters to the whims of a fickle electorate rather than the needs of the citizenry. That Congress and the President must be replaced with a CEO-like figure to run the country as it truly should be, without the confused input of the masses. You know, that CEO-like figure, I already don't really like that. For some in the movement, Donald Trump is that figure. For the hardcore, even the most authoritarian-styled presidential candidate in decades isn't good enough. First of all, how is he the most authoritarian-style presidential candidate? I mean, I'm pretty sure George Bush Sr. was worse. Or Jr. even. Or Ronald Reagan maybe. But yeah, I don't know. For some in the movement... Welcome to the alt-right. The label blends together straight-up white supremacists, nationalists who think conservatives have sold out to globalization, and nativists who fear immigration will spur civil disarray. But at its core, the ideas of a movement known as neo-reaction and neo-reaction NRX for short. Known as why does he say neo-reaction twice? I don't get that. Is a rejection of democracy. Okay, it's a rejection of democracy. Thus, within the world of neo-reaction, Trump's seemingly authoritarian impulses are a feature, not a bug. The only real problem is he may not go far enough. Anorexer, that sounds weird, that sounds wrong. Anorexer, it sounds like he has anorexia. Michael Perilou, I don't know if he's French and if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Perilou, for example, complained that Trump wouldn't pull off the kind of power grab that many of his critics fear him capable of. I don't agree. I do think he would pull off the kind of power grab they fear him to, but I don't think it would be as much of a. Actually, I don't think the term power grab is exactly what we should be looking for. But all right. Is Trump likely to cancel the Constitution, declare martial law, declare himself emperor to be succeeded by his children, nationalize the banks and media, hang some of the worst criminal bankers, send Israelis back to Israel, call the National Guard to roll into Harvard Yard, place all communists and other anti-American elements under house arrest, retire all government employees, replace USG with the Trump Organization, and begin actually rebuilding America and Western civilization? First of all, no, he wouldn't, and I think that's to his credit. Because look, I take some of these, I think are alright, like call the National Guard to roll, which one was it? But they're far and in between. Nationalize the banks and media, that is the important one, that needs to be done. Criminalize the worst bankers, obviously. maybe send the Israelis back to Israel, but you know, to each his. I mean, either I would say, give them a choice of going back to Israel or relinquishing their Israeli passports, something like that. But the same should go for all people with double passports, I think. And that comes from me being, you know, I'm a mutt with a double national identity. I'm half Dutch, half Greek, so you know. But I think that would be part of the solution. Short of that, he's simply another phenomenon within the arcane workings of the system, as worthy of support as the ebb and flow of the tides. I agree. Surely the unprecedented nature of his campaign warrants excited interest as a historical case study and promising foreshock of a true restoration, but he is not the king, and we have a ways to go yet. Alright, so you have these neo-reactionaries, these anoraks who suddenly want, you know, I don't know, I already, you know, I've been looking into these types, you know, monarchists and all this stuff, so you do have them, but I don't think that's I don't think they're representative of the whole movement, I guess. But let's continue. Others on the alt-right hew closer to Trump, though. The alt-right has become a major base of Trump's online support, causing Trump observers from BuzzFeed to National Review to take notice. They're striking fear into the hearts of the mainstream rightists. They are the vehicles by which anti-liberal and dehumanizing sentiments become legitimized in conservative circles, Washington Free Beacon editor Matthew Continetti explained in an essay for Commentary. In an essay for The Federalist called You Can't Whitewash the Alt-Right's Bigotry, Cathy Young assails the movement as a mix of old bigotries and the new identity and victimhood politics adapted by the straight white male. And they keep coming back at this, the straight white male. I mean, we gotta have something, man. Alright, well, anyway. The alt-right is often dismissed as white supremacist. Trump supporters with Twitter accounts, and they are certainly that. I like how they keep, you know, they keep affirming that, as if it means anything. You don't spend any time, but spend some time talking to key players and reading the movement's central texts, as I did, and you'll find it's more than a simple rebranding of white nationalist movement. It's the product of the intersection of a long-standing, long-marginalized part of the conservative movement with both the most high-minded and the basest elements of internet culture. It's a mutated revival of the monster William F. Buckley thought he killed in the 1990s, given new energy by the web. Alright, personally I don't know who William F. Buckley is, so let's look that up. William F. Buckley, American conservative author and commentator. So he is a conservative, so I don't get what kind of monster he destroyed. Sorry about that, by the way. I'm playing Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines lately. It's a pretty sweet game. But let's continue and see if he gives us some clues on what that means. And it's making its impact felt in a big way this election. In the past, when mainstream conservatives have gone up against racialist, conspiratorial elements on the right, they have emerged the victors. Buckley successively... Okay, I get it. So he was an anti-racist conservative. I don't even see, personally, you know, I consider myself alt-right, but I don't consider myself a racialist. I am of mixed heritage, you know, I'm half Greek, half Dutch. I am mostly European, so I would consider myself white. Anyway, even though I have a bit darker complexion. Although my skin is still pretty alabaster white, for Greek standards no less. But I don't see it as representative of the whole movement. You know, I understand there are people talking this way, But I do think for the most part, it's on the one hand, it's a question of, not really. I don't know. I don't want to make judgments about these people, but from what I see on these groups, for example, on the forums, where you can't tell someone's intention from his text necessarily, but you can tell it from the context of what he's saying and from what is happening. Most people post shit, racialist shit or racist shit, maybe, because racialism does have a certain logic behind it. There are races and there are differences between temperaments and cultures, so people are different, and I do think it's best to have the majorities being the way they are and not try to influence that. And I think most will agree with that. But most will jump to extreme standpoints when they are confronted with people who act just as extremely, towards them. So it's kind of a vicious circle, actually. I don't think that most of them actually believe all that stuff, but that's a different issue. It's making its impact felt. Okay. Have emerged victors. Buckley successively marginalized John Birch Society in the 1950s, and then Pat Buchanan and his followers in the 1990s. People like Continetti and Young are trying to do the same thing to the alt-right, but with the huge amounts of online energy behind the movement and Trump likely to become GOP nominee, it's not clear that this time the mainstream will win. Alright, let me take a sip of my coffee. Elon Musk for king. Now this, I really don't understand where this comes from, because I don't know what Elon Musk has to do with the alt-right. Let's start with the most theoretically minded and probably most interesting branch of the alt-right, the neo-reactionaries. In 2007, a writer with the pen name Mencius Moldbug, née Curtis Yarvin, started a blog called Unqualified Reservations. He proceeded to write essays that would inspire a whole movement of online political writers. The neo-reactionaries drew inspiration from earlier paleo-conservatives like Pat Buchanan and Joseph Sobran, but with a tech-y twist. Moldbug, for one, is a veteran Bay Area programmer currently working on a startup he co-founded called Urbit. And the core contention of Moldbug and the other NRX thinkers is one that's been common in techno-libertarian circles for a long time. Democracy is a failure. I mean, it has been part of right-wing thinking for longer than that. And not only that necessarily, it's not the only, there are right-wingers, there are conservatives who are pro-democracy. You also have, like, the Christian Democrats, for example, just naming it something. But anyway. Democracy is, as most writers before the 19th century agreed, an ineffective and destructive system of government, Moldbug writes. Moldbug doesn't actually like the term democracy. He prefers democratism or rule of the people, a label under which he sweeps modern-day developed democracies like the US or Western Europe, but also the former Soviet bloc, Nazism and fascism. Okay. Universalist lawful democracy is the least dematist of demotisms. Demotism light, if you will, he writes. Compared to communism and Nazism, there is much to be said for it, but this is a rather low bar. Okay. The purpose of government, in the view of neo-reactionaries, isn't to represent the will of the people, it is to govern well. Full stop. From the perspective of its subjects, what counts is not who runs the government, but what the government does. Moldbug explains. Good government is effective, lawful government. Bad government is ineffective, lawless government. Okay. How anyone reasonable could disagree with these statements is beyond me, and yet clearly almost everyone does. Yes, I agree. And I do think his point is very reasonable. Personally, I have my doubts about democracy myself. But, then again, I'm Dutch, for example, right? And we had the referendum for Ukraine, and we all voted no, or the vast majority voted no. And I have to say, it's the first time I have witnessed democracy working, or at least, a vote work, because I don't think the government actually gives a shit about what the people voted. But, the potential is there, I guess. Alright, democratic government, the new reactionaries insist, is not effective, lawful government, because the will of the people is arbitrary and varying. It cannot have the consistency of real durable law, and it creates incentives for wasteful and worse still left-wing government. Moltbach stated, as an Austrian school libertarian, and most neo-reactionaries have general small government Moltbach started as an Austrian school libertarian, and most neo-reactionaries have general small government sympathies and express a fear that democracy inevitably leads to ever greater taxation and redistribution and otherwise encroaches on individual liberty. Yes, well, it's true. Democracy and progressive democracy are synonymous and indistinguishable from the expansion of the state. Nick Land, the next most influential neo-reactionary thinker after Moltbach, writes, Since winning elections is overwhelmingly a matter of vote buying, and society's informational organs, educational and media, are no more resistant to bribery than the electorate, a thrifty politician is simply an incompetent politician, and the democratic variant of Darwinism quickly eliminates such misfits from the gene pool. The result is a government that grows larger and larger. Moltbach is even blunter. Cthulhu may swim slowly, but he only swims left. I mean, this doesn't even mean anything. It doesn't, what's this supposed to mean? Cthulhu may swim slowly. I mean, fuck this, man. What, these people... either you shouldn't be writing an article about this, or you should be talking to different representatives, because this guy... I don't know, he has some valid points, but I can't take this seriously. Anyone who thinks Cthulhu is a valid argument for anything should kill themselves. No offense. This is a strain of thinking that more mainstream libertarians have expressed in greater and greater numbers of late. In 2007, George Mason economist Bryan Caplan argued in The Myth of the Rational Voter that democracy will inevitably lead to suboptimal economic policy because the general public is systematically biased against markets, increased productivity and trade with foreigners. Peter Thiel, the libertarian billionaire who co-founded PayPal and Palantir, was the first outsider to invest in Facebook, declared in 2009, I no longer believe that freedom and democracy are compatible. Alright, well, again, those are anecdotal, and those people have nothing to do with the alt-right movement, but I do think their argument holds water. I wanted to reread this. George Mason, economist of Bryan Caplan. No, sorry. George Mason, economist Bryan Caplan. Is George Mason a magazine or a company? I don't know what this is. But yeah, but while mainstream libertarians are outspoken about democracy's deficiencies, they rarely propose an alternative. The neo-reactionaries do. Okay, good to know. Monarchy. Well, not monarchy specifically, but some kind of non-democratic system with rule-driven succession. Moltbach, again, Moltbach likes to use the term formalism or neocameralism. a reference to cameralism, the philosophy of government embraced by Frederick the Great of Prussia. Well, figures he does. God fucking... These fucking Prussians, a different story. Moltbach's vision is corporatist, where instead of a nation belonging to a royal family, it belongs to a corporation with shareholders to whom it is accountable. Go fuck yourself, man. To neo-cameralists, the state is a business which owns a country, he writes. Yeah, so after you sell out Greece to Goldman Sachs, it becomes Goldman Sachs land, and that will be Greece. That's kind of what he's thinking about. So, okay, I'm beginning to understand where this guy is going with this, and I'm going to say this is toxic, and this is not conservatism. This is hypercapitalism, and I'm alt-right, and I do not subscribe to these ideas. There you have it. But one second. Let's see. Let's continue. When asked who should lead it, Moltbach's tech roots come through. It's easy to say, but put Elon Musk in charge, he'll figure it out. In charge. Or, what was this guy's name? The Japanese guy, with the UFOs. I don't remember his name. I don't care. He'll figure it out, and he might well. He tells me via email. I really don't think Elon Musk has any charisma or capacity to lead a country. I don't know where this comes from. This is so retarded. I mean, I saw him in The Big Bang Theory. I really don't get what his accent where his accent comes from, where he comes from, what his deal is. To be honest, I don't know what his achievements are or his, I don't know. So I can't judge about this, but he doesn't seem to me like the leader type. Libertarians also tend to be big fans of modernity. And despite its affinities to the tech world, neo-reactionary really is not. The neo-reactionaries believe that for a long time, maybe since the French Revolution, things have been going to shit. Well, they're right about that. Moltbach likes to trot out anecdotes about crime in the Victorian era to make this point. Here's the description of 1876 London he cites. There are, of course, in most great cities, some quarters of evil repute in which assault and robbery are now again committed. But any man of average stature and strength may wander about on foot and alone, at any hour of the day or the night, through the greatest of all cities and suburbs, along with the high roads, and through unfrequented country lanes, and never have so much as the thought of danger thrust upon him, unless he goes out of his way to court it. The point is clear. Do you feel safe in 21st century America? If not, could it be the case that we're regressing as time wears on and not progressing? Yes, I think it could. The present system has every incentive to portray itself as superior to all past systems. The neo-reactionary Michael Anisimov writes, Reactionaries point out this is not the case and actually see present society in a state of severe decline, pointing to historically high levels of crime, suicide, government, and household debt, increasing time preference, and low levels of civic participation and self-reported happiness as a few examples of a current cultural and historical crisis. Jesus Christ. The demographic crisis in first world countries is cited as another example of decline. Yes, okay. This countering of the narrative of constant progress also makes it easier for the neo-reactionaries to defend actually existing monarchy in the past. Most people living today think of contemporary democratic regimes as clearly better than, say, England as ruled by Elizabeth I. Moltbach believes no such thing. Hitler and Stalin are abortions of the democratic era. Cases of what Jacob Talman called totalitarian democracy. This is easily seen in their unprecedented efforts to control public opinion. Through both propaganda, control public opinion through both propaganda and violence. Elizabeth's legitimacy was a function of her identity. It could be removed only by killing her. Her regime was certainly not the stablest government in history, and nor was it entirely free from propaganda, but she had no need to terrorize her subjects into supporting her. Alright, all good and well. If governments really have gotten less free, and life really has gotten worse in recent centuries, then it's a short leap from those conclusions to think that democracy is a lie. An absolute monarchy has a lot going for it. Note that these empirical claims are, well, not true. Scott Alexander explains well here. His devil's advocate account of reactionary beliefs is also well worth your time. Well, I might look into it. The anti-reactionary FAQ. Planet-sized nutshell. Okay, I don't know if I want to read that. Neo-reaction, the thing is, I agree with their premise, I do think monarchy is better in a sense. It's better than the kind of democracy we have now. And I don't think there's a good kind, to be completely honest, because the democracy of ancient Greece already had a lot of problems going for it, and there was never a good example for it. And the thing is, there are a lot of examples as to why it is a bad idea, because obviously a leader that is elected into office for a short period of time has less motivation to actually win the trust of his people, because he's only there for a few years. So he's gonna try to make a profit of it as much as possible. So, but then again, absolute monarchy is a different story. I don't think hereditary rule should be enforced. But yeah. Neo-reaction, race, and the cathedral. Alright. The other distinguishing conflict between neo-reactionaries and libertarians is the neo-reaction places a huge value on group membership and group loyalty. Most modern libertarians are individualists, motivated by a desire to prevent the masses from oppressing the individual through the mechanism of democratic government. Neo-reactionaries are not individualists. Alright. They think in terms of social structure and order, and view social classes or races as the units determining a future of society. Much as Marxists speak not of individual workers and capitalists, but of the proletariat and the bourgeoisie as a whole. They are tribalists, and for the most part, let's not mince words, they are racists. Yeah, okay, for the most part, I guess. And that's, the types on 4chan and Reddit, and I don't know, man. I mean, I still don't feel comfortable just generalizing them. But I have no doubt many of them are. Okay, but again, there's a difference between skinhead Nazis and people take an interest in these ideas and read up on them and try to make sense of them. Moldbug in particular views American society as a kind of Indian-style caste system. Alright. He views the Democratic Party as a coalition of Brahmins, liberal intellectual types who went to fancy schools, Dalits, poor mostly black Latino people, and Helots, Mexican immigrant workers. What the Dalit Alliance gives progressives is more than just a vote bank, he writes. What the Dalits are is muscle, a militia, a mob. Basically, the Brahmins have every possible Machiavellian interest to encouraging an invasion of third world barbarians. The more, the nastier, the better. Their real hereditary enemy is the native barbarian, a half-civilized Vaishya, the ignorant mega-churched Okie redneck, the Huckabee voter, the Bircher and the McCarthyite. America, Firster, and Coolidge voter. Okay. These are such alien terms to me. This is so weird. And how is America even... I mean, no, I understand what he means with the priesthood, right? The Democratic Party, because that is what it is. The social Marxism and stuff. It has become a religion and it has dominated the debate, whatever, with mobs and poor people. Jesus Christ. This is it is really weird. I have to say, this article is really... I don't know where this comes from. I don't know who the hell promotes these ideas, because the alt-right people I follow, I mean, like Millennial Woes, or I don't know, Black Pigeon, or you know, Paul Ramsey Paul, you know. I mean, they are kind of like that. They are racialist and they are interested in these, you know, they do want to, you know, they do advocate for a sovereign white or sovereign European Western nation, I guess, you know, for a place to call their own. But anyway, let's continue. Moltbach has rejected white nationalism by name. His father is Jewish, for one thing, but only in the course of praising many aspects of it. Although I am not a white nationalist, I am not exactly allergic to the stuff. I believe white nationalism is a very ineffective and political device for solving the very real problems about which it complains. It's a way to put it. Okay. He is sympathetic to the arguments for black racial inferiority. Ever since Mill wrote his response to Carlyle on the Negro question, and probably well before, writers of the English Protestant tradition have been defending the blatantly theological proposition that all men are created equal. He snidely commented on a 2008 blog post. 2008 blog post. Where does he get that stuff? In the absence of any evidence for this proposition, one can always assert that evidence for the contrary is unconvincing. Note that exactly the same rhetorical strategy can prove the existence of God, or the flying spaghetti monster for that matter. Oh. Just as importantly, he and other neo-reactionaries insist that contrary perspectives, support for racist governments, opposition to black liberation movements, etc., are being viciously suppressed by liberal elites in the US. Even just suggest it, Moltbach writes, and you'll see what it means to have enemies. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's true. There is no denying that. But, you know, I do think both sides are being exploited for different interests, you know, just as much as the Black Lives Matter, the leaders of the movement are also, you know, sons of millionaires, and, you know, people. I have the suspicion that they are funded by NGOs and that kind of thing, who just want to stir up violence or hysteria, you know, to promote an agenda. The same thing, I think, goes for much of the alt-right movement, and the same thing goes for Milo Yiannopoulos, for example, who works at Breitbart, and Breitbart is, you know, all the alt-righters should be crying out against Breitbart. Its founder was a Jew, so probably Zionist. It's a very, you know, it's very obvious why Breitbart is the at least if you follow their reasoning, you know, because I'm no anti-Semite, you know, but they do seem able to afford being the only ones able to afford talking about these issues, like Trump is, you know, and Trump has his own reasons because he's a multimillionaire himself, so, you know, it's an easy fit, you know, but that means that these people have vested interests. So it works both ways, you know. That's what we should be careful of, and that's why I don't know. Alt-right sounds good, but maybe we should let that one go as well. I mean, I don't know. MRA is already gone. All these things are gone. Gamergate is gone. So let's just, I don't know. Let's just see where it goes. No reaction demands. Okay. Where was I? Okay. Park McDougall, in an excellent piece on Nick Land's brand of neo-reaction, describes the cathedral as a media academic mind control apparatus. I actually think the best analogy is to the role of the patriarchy plays in radical feminist epistemology, or the role of ideology in Marxism. Neo-reaction demands total rethinking of the way the world works in such attempts, and such attempts generally only succeed if they can attack the source of knowledge in society and offer a theory for why they're systematically fallible. Okay. That's how feminist scholars have, I think correctly, undermined pseudoscientific attempts to paint female servility as natural, or male aggression and violence as inevitable and ultimately acceptable. What does this have to do with anything? Why do you bring that up now? Because now I have to talk about feminism and biological urges. Because yes, I do think it's natural. Not necessarily female servility, but female, how do you say that? Caretaking, and male yeah, well, it's true. Not necessarily male aggression, but male, responsibility, taking, whatever. I don't know, man. Yes, the argument goes, these ideas have had elite supporters in the past. No, it has nothing to do with elite supporters. But those elites were tainted by institutional sexism. Go fuck yourself. There's nothing to do with it. Similarly, Marxists are always alert to how media produced by big corporations can be tilted to serve one corporation's class interests. So yes, but that's true, but that has nothing to do with the biology of the sexes. Similarly, Marxists are always alert to how media Yes, but fuck, I mean, it's not as if corporations, but it has nothing to do with class interests. It's just the it's just the ultra. I mean, yes, in this case, it's the ultra rich, but we don't have a caste system like we used to, So you have the rich, you have the capitalists, but that's the difference, I don't know why Marxism switched from the workers and the capitalists to the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, because these were part of the caste system that existed before the system we have now. And the thing about those is that the bourgeoisie, they aren't the aristocracy the way they are thought up to be. The bourgeoisie were the middle class, who actually in the during the French Revolution, or during the American Revolution maybe even, dethroned the aristocracy. And then they became the aristocracy. That was the capitalist class. But that's a different story, and the thing is that then you had a whole bunch of revolutions against them, but the thing is that each time someone else got the title of bourgeoisie, of oppressor. It's totally stupid. Bourgeoisie means civilian, someone who lives in the city, actually. A burger. not the meat bun or whatever. But anyway, neo-reaction takes this approach and flips it on its head. No, it's not institutional sexism or bourgeois class interest that's perverting our knowledge base. It's institutional progressivism and fear of the revival of monarchism, tribalism, and prejudice. Okay, so now here you go again. I don't give a shit about tribalism. Tribalism is backwards, is primitive. Monarchism, we need to figure out what we mean by that, because the thing is that the whole problem started when the monarchs started to owe money to bankers. You know, they started taking loans and not being able to pay them back. And then you had nationalism and the Industrial Revolution, because they needed to make a profit, and turned out it wasn't enough. They went and expanded, you know, they went and built colonies. And these colonies, they only put them further in debt, you know, because the people who profited from them were actually, again, the ultra rich. Here in Holland, we know that. You know, we had colonies in New Guinea and in Indonesia and Suriname and all these places, where they used to have coffee plantations. You know, and they had the local people work for them, and the people who profited of it were the so-called coffee barons. You know, they made all the money, and they came home and brought presents for their grandkids and whatever, because that's where the tradition of Santa Claus comes from. Sinterklaas in Holland, you know, who has his black Pete's, you know, the little slaves that bring the gifts, that carry them around, because they used to come back with their slaves and bring gifts to their families. So, you know, it's not just monarchism. What you need, you do need responsible rulers. You know, you can't have, especially now, we can't afford having frivolous idiots on the throne. You know, that's kind of the problem. So I don't think monarchism is gonna solve the problem. And prejudice, yeah, I mean, fear of prejudice is a prejudice in itself, but that doesn't justify prejudice. You know, let's be honest about that. There's no reason to be prejudiced about anyone unless they give you reason for it. Okay. But yeah, to a certain extent, prejudice is natural, and you know, some prejudices are rational. You know, you do have gut feelings that you need to listen to from time to time. But yeah, that makes it a lot easier for neo-reactionaries to defend their narrative of Western decline and democratic failure. If you look at the numbers, the Whig theory of history, with some faults and starts, everything's getting better. Apparently, appears to be basically right. Everything's getting okay. Extreme poverty is at historic lows. Hunger and infant mortality are plummeting. Life expectancy is going up. War is on the decline. Education is more available. Homicide rates are down, etc. I don't think that's right. But anyway. But what if those numbers are all lies produced by biased cathedral sources in academia and propagated by cathedral tools in the media like Vox? What then? I like how he doesn't exclude himself from the cathedral, I guess. Jesus Christ, this is a long article. Maybe I shouldn't do it in 2 parts, but I don't care. Before the neo-reactionaries, there were paleocons. The neo-reactionaries are the distinctly OOs and tens phenomena. I really don't know how to call those, you know, maybe teens? But they draw on the racialist and traditionalist arguments of a much older movement, paleoconservatism. The term paleoconservatism is a retronym coined in the 1980s to characterize a brand of conservatism that was by then going extinct. A brand exemplified by Robert Taft, the Ohio senator and legendary isolationist who lost the 1952 Republican nomination to Dwight Eisenhower, and by Pat Buchanan in his 1992, 1996 and 2000 presidential runs. Paleocons agree with the mainstream conservatism on social issues. They tend to be stridently anti-abortion, anti-LGBT writes, I'm not even gonna hit the queue. Pro-school prayer and a disproportionately traditionalist Catholic. And on the evils of the welfare state, but part ways on international affairs including immigration, trade and warfare. Paleocons are largely isolationists, warning America against foreign entanglements and dismissing neocon attempts at democracy promotion as hubristic and doomed to failure. They were overwhelmingly against the Iraq War and tend to be heavily critical of Israel. They're also more fervently nationalist than mainstream Republicans. That translates into a very negative view of immigration, both due to its perceived economic harm to Americans and because of the damage it does to American culture, and into more support for tariffs and trade protection. But since Buchanan, the movement hasn't had a loud national voice. After 9/11, Paleocon isolationism became anathema among conservative intellectuals and politicians. Mainstream conservatives like George W. Bush and Marco Rubio embraced immigration reform that offered unauthorized immigrants citizenship. Free trade opposition with the GOP went extinct. There are a number of reasons the Paleocons lost ground, but a big one was that the movement had a huge racism problem, in particular skepticism of foreign entanglements, and the alliance with Israel specifically would occasionally bleed in overt anti-Semitism. Joseph, you know what? I don't know if I even need to continue with this. This is such cancer. I mean, I can't even finish this. I don't know where he does the. You know what? Personally, I'm just gonna cut it short here because this is really, really ridiculous. I'm not even sure if I'm still gonna upload this. The thing is, I'm not American. Probably my view of conservatism is different than theirs. Basically. This whole shitstorm, I don't know where this all comes from. This is so bizarre. Just hurts my head just thinking about it. I mean, you know, I think America just needs a nuclear bomb and just needs to be jump-started. Just needs to be reset and be built from scratch. I don't know what they're doing, what's happening there anymore. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, everyone. I'm not gonna bother anymore. Ta-ta.